And let's bring in Scott Reid, our CTV News political commentator. Scott, thanks as always for joining us.
Morning, Roger.
What are you expecting for tomorrow? Is she going to be close, do you think, with the deficit?
I very much doubt that. It's hard to imagine when you take a look at the expenditures that have been made and the commitments that have been made going forward since her last set of projections. And so I think we'll see that the deficit itself will grow in size. I think you'll hear the finance minister emphasize that as a percentage of our GDP, as a percentage of our economic growth as a country, we're still holding steady or even on a path to slightly decline. But I do think that that big number is going to be a big number. And I'm talking about the deficit for next year, 50, 55, 60. It's going to be large.
Wow. So how do you sell that? Will people buy it, that we're running a deficit that large, or do people not even think about deficits, federal deficits anymore?
Well, if you confront people directly, they will tell you, no. Of course, I'm worried about the deficit, and I want to see my government, practice fiscal prudence. But when you stack it up against the other demands that people have in practice, how deep is that concern really? It's not like the early 1990s when Canadians were literally demanding spending cuts from the government. So we'll see. I think the government strategy, more or less, is going to be to distract, however. I think they'll table those numbers, but then I think you're going to see that they're going to talk about measures that they're going to take as a counter to Donald Trump and tariffs. And I think their hope is that those measures and the topicality of Trump and tariffs and what that means for our outlook, that will balance some of the bad news of the deficit, that it will at least compete, if you will, for our attention.
Let's talk a little bit about that threat. And is that united front still there? We heard from Premier Ford in Ontario, Mo now commenting on it. Is it holding together the Canada United?
Well, it kind of depends on how you look at it. I mean, one could say that this strategy of having different premiers take different stances in public is, in a weird way, sort of helpful for the federal government. Is it coordinated? Is it deliberate? Is it conscious? My guess is not. As reports of an export tax bubble to the surface, you do see premiers like Smith and Mo go, whoa, we do not want that. Effectively a tax on energy exports. They're freaking out about that. You see Doug Ford in Ontario taking a very different tone, threatening that he will cut off electricity exports to the United States. So you get some good cop, bad cop. You have competing perspectives. For the prime minister, it at least allows him to not have to be the heavy. But, the question I think that looms over all of this is, one, can we do anything, plausibly anything, to stop these tariffs? When Danielle Smith says it's not too late, we can still get away with stopping these tariffs. How? I'm skeptical. And secondly, if we are going to end up with tariffs from the United States, what's our counterpunch? And can we afford to counterpunch? Or does that just drag us into a war that we're not able to win?
All right. And long term with this budget, will it have any, going back to it for a second, or the economic statement, will it have any impact on Chrystia Freeland's future? We've talked about that there's possible rift between her and the prime minister. Will she still be the finance minister, you think, 6 months from now, if there's still a Liberal government?
That's a real jackpot question, Roger. No one seems to know, but I do think this. There are rumors that are bubbling to the surface on the front pages of the newspaper, talking about a rift between the finance minister and the prime minister, talking about differences of opinion and tension there. And from my perspective, it falls to the prime minister's office to shut that stuff down. If it's not true, come out on the record and say it's not true. Say she's staying where she is. If I was her and I was watching these news stories unfold and not hearing the prime minister's office declare that I will be in this job in 6 months, I wouldn't be buying any green bananas.
All right, Scott, thank you as always, sir.
Thank you.